This is part 3 of my video series on how to draw a realistic face. In the previous part, you learned how to draw the skin and the nose, and in this part, you will learn how to draw the eyes. Then in the next week's tutorial, we will move on to the lips. So subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss it or any of the other parts, because I will post one part each week. But for now, let's start drawing the eyes. We already drew some of the skin around the eyes in part 2, so watch that video first if you haven't already. And I mean, of course, we will work a bit more on that in this video as well. But first, we will start by drawing the eyeball using an HB pencil. So start by adding some color on the outer part of the eyeball, but not too much because you don't want to make it too dark. And then blend it out with a Q-tip. And since eyeballs are usually not completely super white, I also use the Q-tip to slightly add some light color to the rest of the eyeball. And as you can see, I even use the Q-tip way more than I use the HB pencil, just because I really did not want to make it too dark. Then I increase the shadows of the skin around the eyes a bit using a 2B pencil, but I start by first focusing on the frame of the eyes, and yeah, then I blend it out with a blending stump. Next, I use a 2H pencil to create some creases on the eyelid. I then continue adding shadows in the eyeball with a 2B and an HB pencil. And if you're wondering why I move back and forth between different parts of the eye, it's because, just as I explained in the previous video, when you draw something and then move to draw somewhere else, you see how the first part that you drew looks in relation to the second thing you drew. And then you may notice that the first part that you drew needs some adjustments. And also remember that you can use a kneaded eraser to erase any mistakes or make an area a bit lighter. And in case you make it too light, you can of course go back and just make it a little bit darker with the Q-tip rather than the pencil in the beginning, and then you can move back to the pencil. So at this point, I just work on the eyeball and tear duct area by looking at my reference photo and seeing where the shadows and where the highlights are, and I draw them accordingly. Using a 2B pencil, I intensify the shadows, and eventually I also use the 2B pencil and start filling in the iris. So for the iris, I make a circle around the iris and lightly fill it in, and I blend it. Then I make some areas even darker, which is usually right under the eyelid and around the pupil, as you can see in the video. And I don't blend anything yet. I instead fill in the pupil using a 6B pencil. And I also use this pencil to intensify the eyeliner. Then I take the 2B pencil and I draw some lines inside of the iris, as you can see. And on the paper on the side, I'm showing you that you can draw the lines from the pupil and towards the center of the iris, as well as a few lines from the outer part of the iris and towards the center. Then I lightly blend this out with a Q-tip, and the reason why I blend it is because I want the lines to be visible, but I don't want them to be too sharp. And on the paper on the side, you can also see that I'm now drawing a light shadow at the outer edges of the iris and around the pupil. I then blend this out using a small blending stump. Then I use a 2H pencil and I increase the lines a bit because the 2H pencil is great for adding small details. I then grab a 2B pencil and draw some lines in the upper part of the white circle that is in the pupil. And the white circle is coming from the light, so those black lines is the reflection from the eyelashes. Next, I use the 6B pencil to intensify the eyelid line, and then I draw the eyelashes. And as I'm first showing you on the side, you want to draw the eyelashes starting from a little bit below the eyelid, and then make a small curve and sweep it up. And when you sweep it up, you want to reduce the pressure of the pencil and let go. This way, the most outer part of the eyelash will look more natural. And if you have the same pressure for the entire eyelash, there is a risk that it will become too thick, so this step is quite important. And in the most outer part of the eye, you want to draw the eyelashes more to the left. And then on the inner part of the eye, the part that is closest to the nose, you want to draw them pointing more towards the right or more towards the nose. However, to keep them looking more natural, you can draw just a few lashes in the opposite direction on each side. And before I draw the bottom lashes, I'm fixing the lower waterline with a kneaded eraser because I accidentally made it too dark before. So for the bottom lashes, you want to do something similar that you did with the upper lashes. And the difference is that we draw the lashes from the outer parts of the waterline, and they should also be shorter than the upper lashes. I also find that sometimes the bottom lashes may go in more different directions than the upper lashes, but as a basis, you want to draw them in the direction that I'm showing you in the video. Next, I take a white gel pen and add a highlight in the tear duct area. And if you accidentally made the white circle by the pupil too dark, you can use the gel pen there as well. Just make sure to not draw on top of the lines that you made as the reflection from the eyelashes. Otherwise, you can just draw them back in again. And then I also use the kneaded eraser to create some highlights along the lower lash line and the upper eyelid. Then I take the 2H pencil again to fix the creases on the eyelids further. And I also make some creases on the lower eyelid in the directions that you can see in the video. And then I blend it very slightly with the Q-tip so it won't be too sharp. And here I'm using the HB pencil just to fix some shadows around the tear duct area. For the eyebrow, I first make a base layer using the HB pencil. And then I blend it out with the Q-tip. I then take a 0.5mm mechanical pencil and draw some strokes in the directions that you can see in the video. It's a bit difficult to explain with words, but generally the hairs go more upwards in the inner part and more to the side in the center of the eyebrow, and then more downwards on the outer part. And on the outer part, we don't just want to draw them downwards. As you can see, I'm making strokes that go from each edge of the brow and towards the center of the outer parts of the brow. I try to show you on the picture on the side because, as I said, it's very difficult to explain with words, but hopefully the picture can help you. And just as we did with the eyelashes, we want to sweep the strokes with less pressure in the end before letting go, but we don't want to curve the eyebrow hairs like we did with the eyelashes. I also want to mention that on the inner part of the eyebrow, the part that is closest to the nose, the eyebrow hairs can tend to grow a bit more sparse, so you don't want to make them as full there. But of course, this also depends on the person's eyebrow shape. I also use a 6B pencil to make some darker hair strokes. Then I use a 0.3mm mechanical pencil to add even thinner strokes, especially by the edges of the eyebrow, and this just makes everything look more natural. I then take the HB pencil and intensify the shadow under the eyebrow a little bit because I thought it was needed. And ideally you don't want to do this after drawing the brow, but if you have to, just make sure to be careful enough to not fade away the eyebrow hairs that you just drew. In the end, I very lightly blend the eyebrow with a Q-tip just to soften the strokes without fading them out. And I also add some extra hairs afterwards with the 0.3mm pencil. Next, I take the HB pencil and I increase the shadows wherever it was needed on the eye. And now it's time for the next eye, where we basically do the exact same things as on the first eye. So first we want to increase the shadows of the skin around the eye using the 2B pencil and then blend it out. Then we create shadows on the edges of the eyeball using an HB pencil and the Q-tip. I then use the kneaded eraser to remove some color or add highlights. And with the 2H pencil, we make creases on the eyelid. And you can also use the 0.3mm mechanical pencil for this. As you can see, I used the kneaded eraser a bit because I wasn't satisfied with it at first, so I redid it. Then I used the 2B pencil again to increase the shadows around the eyelid, and I also do this using the 6B pencil. Then I take the 2B pencil and just like before, I create a shadow on the outer part of the iris and also focusing a bit more on the upper part of the iris. I then fill in the pupil with a 6B pencil. I also use the 6B pencil to create a shadow on the iris right under the eyelid. Then I blend it out with a Q-tip and start creating those lines with a 2B pencil before slightly blending them as well. I then make a second layer of lines and blend before increasing the shadow on the outer edges of the iris. And on this eye, the shadow on her left part of the eyeball is darker than on the other eye, so I use a 6B pencil to increase the shadow there. I then adjust some highlights and shadows before taking the white gel pen and intensifying the highlights by the iris, as well as creating a highlight in the tear duct area. And compared to the other eye, this eye also has a highlight on her left side of the eye. I then adjust some shadows as well as draw some lines in the white circle by the pupil to create a reflection. I've been trying to record this like 1,000 times and I don't know why I can't say reflection. I could it before, but now I can't. Okay. Yeah, a reflection from the eyelashes. And yeah, I actually thought that the last highlight that I made was a bit too intense, so I used the blending stump a bit over it to decrease it slightly. I then adjusted some shadows and highlights further before drawing the eyelashes with the 6B pencil. And for some reason, I started with the bottom lashes on this eye. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but yeah. However, keep in mind that on this eye, you want to draw the eyelashes on the inner part of the eye, the part that is closer to the nose, more to the left. And on the other part, you want to draw them more to the right. And I also used the 0.3 millimeter mechanical pencil and drew some eyelashes again. And yeah, it just can make the eyelashes look slightly more natural when not all eyelashes are in the same thickness. And just to recap, remember to create a slight bend by the eyelid and then sweep the lash upwards as you also decrease the pressure with the pencil, and then let go. I then add a few more highlights between the lashes with the kneaded eraser. And I also add some highlights in the iris. Then I take the 2H pencil and create some creases on the lower eyelid, just like before. And again, for the eyebrow, I first make a base layer with the HB pencil and blend it out. Then I draw hair strokes with the 0.5 millimeter and 0.3 millimeter mechanical pencil. I then increase the shadow under the eyebrow a bit using the 2B pencil, but making sure to not fade any eyebrow hairs or eyelashes when I blend it out. I then use the 6B pencil to draw some darker eyebrow hairs. And I also decided to add some more eyebrow hairs to the other eyebrow. Next, I adjusted some shadows and highlights. Then I took the 2H pencil to create some veins on the eyeballs on both eyes before continuing adjusting the shadows and highlights. And that is basically it for this video. I hope it was helpful for you and that you are enjoying this video series so far. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.